Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us in this next installment of this open discussion series that we're doing for our videos. I'm joined by John. John is the team's World War II aficionado. He's been playing airsoft for 10 years, one of our long-standing members. So thanks so much for joining me. Today what we thought we'd talk about is helmets. So I think almost every single airsofter has at some point worn or perhaps continues to wear a helmet as part of their regular kit. Typically, there'll be modern style helmets like a fast helmet, a Pascat, or a Mitch helmet. But at some point, we'll be wearing helmets. And they are, we can wear them for protection because they look cool because, of course, airsoft is a fashion show. Yeah. But fundamentally, a huge part of a helmet's drawback is, the decrease in concealability. So I think today what we want to really touch on is how do you conceal your helmet to help conceal yourself on the field? So John, why don't you talk to us a little bit about the helmets that we have in front of us today?
Sure. Well, up front we have two modern reproduction fast helmets. This is Chris's and this is Phil's. We have a 1942 dated Canadian manufacturer Mark II helmet. We have a reproduction of a British Mark II parachutist helmet. And this is a real steel but reproduction liner of a British Mark II parachutist helmet.
So these two helmets here, they're the same helmet, right? Yep. And I guess the only difference that we can see, aside from the differences between the makes themselves,
yep,
but is this one has all this scrim stuff on top of it, and this one doesn't.
Yep.
Right? So why don't you tell us a little bit about what this scrim is?
So under this scrim, as Phil said, the bare essentials of the helmet is this net. So underneath all the scrim is just this. But what scrim is pieces of burlap or hessian that has been dyed to fit your environment that you're kind of fighting in, usually done by you. And it's just kind of threaded through the loops on the net to reduce the helmet's distinctive circular shape. There's a really good example of shown in the U.S. training manual FM5-20A. We'll link that in the description. But it says that the primary objective of camouflage applies to the head, the body, and just the overall equipment that you're wearing. So the biggest thing with a helmet, as Phil kind of alluded to, is its distinctive profile that it gives the wearer. So up in front here, we have kind of like what you see most often on the field, which is the two fast helmets. And this being, like I said, Chris's helmet and this is Phil's, they have two different approaches to how they want to conceal their heads. So what Chris has done here, he's simply painted a camouflage pattern on his helmet. The biggest drawback, that's obviously observable to everybody, I would hope, is that it reflects light. Being that this is a dull paints don't always work to absorb the light and not reflect it. Whereas Phil kind of has taken my favorable approach of concealing his helmet in a U.S. pattern of helmet cover. We all wear woodland, so this kind of fits the bill of creating a uniform look to our appearance, as well as you can plainly see, there is no shine to it.
So I think the thing that I noticed right away though is that these both still look like a helmet.
Yeah.
Whereas this kind of just looks like a pile of whatever.
Yeah.
Right? So obviously if you're, and we've said this in other videos, if you're playing Speedsoft, you probably don't want to listen to anything we say anyway. Because in a Speedsoft environment, it doesn't really matter what your helmet looks like. It's not so much about concealing yourself.
Yeah.
But if you're in a situation where maybe you're playing a milsim game or an objective-based game and you want to really conceal yourself, it seems to me that something like this would be more effective. And based on what we've talked about before when we were, planning for this video, it certainly seems that this method hasn't really changed since like World War I, World War II,
yeah,
right?
Definitely. Though it's kind of went away in its numbers as present through pictures of modern militaries. But it's kind of interesting that it's still prominent throughout the British military, and they still seem to harken back to the principle of concealing of the head and breaking up the distinctive outline as well as reducing glare, which is the two fundamental things you want to go about doing when you are camouflaging not only yourself but your equipment. So in modern cases, what you see is like the British Mark 6 and Mark 7 helmets, they have issued a helmet cover, usually in DPM or Desert DPM or MTP. But they're always affixed to those covers is straps, so you can wrap natural foliage or scrim or shred, like cut up DPM, Desert DPM, or MTP clothing.
So just walk us through this process. So
Sure.
obviously you have a helmet liner here. A helmet netting here. So it's literally just a matter of threading the burlap through.
Yeah, exactly that. So the big takeaway that should be from this video is you want to break up the outline, and this is just one of the simplest methods of doing so. So just by getting rid of this obvious dome shape of a helmet, by adding some contours to it that are typically found in nature, will do a really good job of concealing you.
And so is it also something you can do is like have this like pre-done and then you can just throw the netting on top of an existing helmet?
Definitely.
Yeah?
And that's kind of made apparent here through this Mark II helmet. So I already did, I did this, but it's obviously not with scrim or Hessian burlap. It's done with oiled cloth or t-shirts. And so you just pop it on top of the helmet. I'm not going to tie it because I have to get the liner, and it's a whole show. But anyways, you can just see from this one basic example of throwing the helmet cover on, the glare and the shape of the helmet has been concealed considerably.
Okay, that's great. So I just want to take a little bit of a break from talking about helmets just to answer a question that we had from one of our viewers. George O said, or had asked us, I should say, do you see with your offside eye through the sight when you use your offside position? So obviously we talk a lot about shooting from your offside. So do you actually look through your offside eye? And the answer to that question is yes, we do. So when we aim on our offside, we're looking through our left side, or our offside eye, I should say. And it can certainly be a little bit challenging to get to that point. One thing that we recommend is for our viewers to look up sort of cross-eye dominance from real shooting instructors. There's a lot of different exercises you can do, from as simple as holding your fingers out and focusing on one or the other. But the absolute simplest method that you can do when you're shooting from your offside is to just quickly close and reopen your dominant eye, and that'll allow your offside eye to focus on what you're looking on through the field. So whether it's your red dot or your irons or whatever. So when you're moving around and you're looking, you can just quickly close your eye like this. Make sure that you're keeping your focus here. You can still get a good situational awareness, but it forces your brain to sort of refocus to your other eye, and you get that good sight picture.
I kind of found when I was getting started with shooting offsides that through repetition and just constant maintenance on being dominant with both eyes, making sure they're both open, gave me a better field of view, not only for the field, but it also allowed me to have a better situational awareness on the field as well.
Thanks so much for the question, Giorgio. If any of you have any questions you'd like us to answer on video, please do leave them in the comment section below. So coming back to helmets now, hopefully some of you will have been convinced that, okay, I want to put some sort of scrim on my helmet. But first off, I don't have a fancy netting like this. And secondly, like, do I need all this scrim here and like these colors and stuff? So how should they approach that?
I mean, you can source a net if your helmet is a traditional helmet, like an US M1. If you're doing a British parachutists from 1944 to 1980, you have one of these Mark IIs, or as simple if you're doing another World War II reenactment and you have just any old pot like this Mark II, Brody, you can take simple approaches to getting a simple fishnet if you can find one at a local store. Just dump it on. Even just by the net itself, it does break up the outline, which is beneficial in only that it reduces glare from a forward point of view, as well as it looks cool. Let's get real.
Yeah.
But going back to this and what my methodology was, and kind of the reasoning behind why I did so much scrim on this pot was being that this is for a Second World War reenactment of a first Canadian parachutist. I wanted to replicate kind of what I saw through pictures, and a lot of the original photos that I saw had these big helmets, kind of big scrims. And it's also kind of favorable to the environment that I kind of play in, and we as a team all operate in. Mm-hmm. We play in a more forestry environment. It's more a lot of greens, a lot of browns, and in the spring and fall, it's a lot of tans. So these kind of predominant colors that you kind of see on this pot are a reflection of the typical environment that we operate in. So this wouldn't obviously fare very well in that desert environment or a more like arid environment.
So I guess there's a lot to be said about making sure that you're also picking colors that fit in your environment. So that's all good for a helmet like this, but like I look at Chris's helmet, and he doesn't have a helmet cover, he doesn't have a net, he does have this like cable management system that he has because of the battery pack. So if you take Chris's helmet,
Sure.
like what would you do to that helmet to start like breaking up that outline?
Sure.
So this is a typical fast helmet. Like, I mean, the guys can see there's bungee cords and stuff here from his management system. So what do you do with something like that? Is it as simple as just tying burlap to it?
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially that. It's just, this operates the same way as a net does. So very loosely, you can just thread it like this. Maybe you want to do a bit of reinforcement or something. Maybe tie a bow if you're feeling up to it. Just simple things like this to break up the outline of the helmet will do wonders for you. And it's also important not to break. Verticality is good, but it matters below the helmet. Because, I mean, this is probably the clearest example with this helmet here. If you don't have things going down, the shape of the helmet's still present. So you can have as much scrim as you want up top. It still doesn't matter. Below the belt here, it's going to be the same. It's still the same profile, same silhouette. You need stuff to break up that.
And I think, there's something to be said. Like, I mean, I look at my own helmet and, you've got me convinced to stuff some burlap into it.
Oh, yeah.
But I definitely don't need to go crazy like this. Like, I don't need this much burlap. It might just be, as effective to have a little bit less just in terms.
Yep.
This is obviously for the fashion show.
Yeah.
But you could have a little less and still get away with it.
Definitely.
So hopefully you guys found this helpful. It's a very simple process, like John was saying. Don't be afraid to try stuff, to put some burlap on your helmet. Even some natural vegetation too, if you have it, like sticks and stuff like that.
I would say that that's probably the preferred route to go down. If you can stuff this with dead grass, branches, leaves, anything really that's found locally in your environment, would do wonders compared to this.
Bottom line for you guys, for all of us, I think the takeaway here is, if you're gonna do nothing else, you should at least paint your helmet.
Yeah.
If you're gonna paint it and you're gonna go through that trouble, you might as well try and find some way to attach some scrim to it.
Yep.
And some natural vegetation.
If you're gonna go out and spend all this money on camouflage, at least camouflage your helmet. It does wonders for you in the field if you're playing defensively, as well as offensively, because it takes a lot of time to register what you're seeing if this big mop is coming towards you. And don't worry about looking weird or feeling embarrassed about what you've done. This looks foolish, but it works. So just have confidence in yourself and just get creative with it.
So guys, I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks, John, for joining us today. If you like what you see, make sure to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.